Good morning, everybody. We're going to get started with chapter 17. It is a really short chapter, so it's not going to take us too long to listen to it or to read it. It's also one of the probably most important chapters because it's kind of influences everything else that happens. And we're just about done. We only have a few more chapters to go. Remember in chapter 16, that's the chapter where Reuben died, where he was coming out of the hospital and the commandant saw him, a young child by himself. And he took him to meet his mother. So Hannah had a really, really hard time with that. And she's kind of at the point right now where she's losing hope a little bit. She needs something to kind of get her through and to help her to keep moving forward and to remain hopeful, to remain strong, and to remember and to cherish that life that she has. So let's get started with chapter 17. There is a plan, Gittel whispered, and Yitzchak and Shmuel are part of it. She had crept onto the sleeping shelf, putting her arm around Hannah and speaking very softly into her ear. You must not be afraid, but you must not tell anyone. I am part of it too. Hannah didn't move. Gittel's voice tickled her ear. The reason I am telling you this is that you are our only flesh and blood, our only link with the past. If something happens to us, you must remember. Promise me, Chaya, you will remember. Hannah's lips moved, but no sound came out. Promise. I will remember. The words forced themselves out through her stiffened lips. Good. What plan? Hannah managed to ask. If I tell you, you might say. Never. You would not mean to, but it could slip out. Not even if a filet brennen und bruten, even if you should be burned and roasted. Here, that is not a proverb to be spoken aloud. Horrified at what she'd said, Hannah felt herself begin to giggle. It was a hysterical reaction, but she couldn't seem to control herself. Nevertheless, Gittel ended. I will not tell you. When, Hannah whispered. You will know. The horn signaled morning roll call, and Gittel rolled off the shelf. Hannah followed, stood, and stared at her. Is it because of Reuben? She asked quietly. For Yitzchak it is. Who else does he have left, poor man? He adored those children, Gittel said. But why you? Why Shmuel? If not us, who? If not now, when? Gittel smiled. I think I've heard those words before, Hannah said slowly. You will hear them again, Gittel promised. Now we must not talk about this any more. And yet, for all of Gittel's promises, nothing seemed to happen. The day's routines were as before. The day's routines were as before. The only change being the constant redness of the sky as trainloads of nameless Nganji were shipped along the rails of death. Still, the camp seemed curiously lightened because of it, as if everyone knew that as long as others were processed, they would not be. A simple bit of mathematics like subtraction, where one taken away from the top line becomes one added on to the bottom. The devil's arithmetic. When? She whispered at night to Gittel. You will know, Gittel always answered. You will know. And yet, when it finally happened, Hannah was surprised that she hadn't known, hadn't even suspected. There had been no signs or portents, no secret signals, just an ordinary day in the camp. And at night, she went to bed on the hard, coverless shelf, trying to remember sheets and pillows and quilts, while all around her, in the black barrack, she heard the breathy sounds of sleeping women. A hand on her back and over her mouth startled her so. She was too surprised to protest. Chaya, it is now, Gittel's voice whispered in her ear. Not if you understand. She nodded, opening her eyes wide, though it was too dark to see anything. The plan, she said, her words hot on Gittel's palm. She sat up abruptly and just missed smacking her head on the upper shelf. Gittel took her hand away. Follow me, she whispered. Am I part of the plan? Of course, child. Did you think we would leave you in this hell? They crept to the door, and Hannah could feel her heart thudding madly. It was warm in the barrack, yet she felt cold. Here, Giddle whispered, shoving something into her hands. Hannah looked down. She could see nothing in the dark, but she realized she was holding a pair of shoes. We'll put them on outside. They paused at the door, and then Giddle eased it open slowly. It protested mildly. It's not locked, Hannah said, shocked. Some guards can be bribed, Giddle whispered. Give me your hand. Slipping her hand into Giddle's, Hannah held back for a moment. What about Fag? Shmuel wouldn't go without Fag. Giddle's hand on hers tightened. Fag says she prefers the dark wolf she knows to the dark one she does not. Even with Shmuel going, but she loves him. She has come to love her next bowl of soup more, Giddle said. Now hush. They slipped through the door, shut it, and locked it from the outside with a too loud snick. Hannah shivered at the sound and took Giddle's hand again. Ice on ice. We meet behind the midden, Giddle whispered. No more talking now. So this is their plan. And Fag has decided to not be a part of it. She's fragile. She is fearful. She doesn't have the strength to try to escape with them. As much as she loves Shmuel and as much as she obviously hates the situation that she's in, she understands the situation that she's in. And she's going to stay there and try to make the best of it. This is way too much for Fag. She doesn't have the strength. She doesn't have the ability to attempt an escape. She just cannot do it. So that's what she's chosen to do. She's chosen to stay behind in the camp while the rest of them are going to try to escape and see what happens. Hannah looked up. There was no moon. Above them, in the cloudless sky, stars were scattered as thick as sand. A small warm breeze blew across the compound. Night insects chirped. Hannah took a deep breath. The air was sweet-smelling, fresh, new. A dog barked suddenly, and a harsh voice quieted with a command. Giddle pulled Hannah back against the barracks wall. Hannah could feel the fear threatening to scream out of her, so she dropped the shoes and put both hands over her mouth, effectively gagging herself. There was a wetness under her arms, between her legs, down her back. She moaned. And then there came a shout, a shot, and another, rumbling, staccato. A man began to scream, high-pitched and horrible. He called a single phrase over and over and over, Ribbono shel Olam. Quickly, Giddle whispered hoarsely. It is ruined before the lights. Come! As she spoke, great spotlights raked the compound, missing them by inches and seeking the outer perimeter of wire fence and minefields and the woods beyond, where Hannah thought she saw shadows chasing shadows into the dark trees. Giddle dragged her back to the barracks door, slid the bolt open with one hand, and shoved Hannah inside with the other. They both sank gratefully to the floor. What is it? The Blokova's voice called out from her private room. Hannah's mouth opened. What could they say? They would be found out. They would be chosen. I went to get my bowl to relieve myself, Giddle called, her voice incredibly calm. And then shots began outside, and I was so frightened I fell to the floor, dropping the bowl. She pushed Hannah away from her as she spoke. Crawling on her hands and knees, Hannah made it back across the room to her sleeping shelf. She lifted herself onto it gratefully, trembling so hard she was sure she would wake everyone. You Jews, the Blokova's voice drawled sleepily. You can never do anything quietly or efficiently. That is why the Germans will finish you all off. If you have to relieve yourself, wait until the morning or do it in your bed, or you shall have to deal with me. Yes, Blokova, Giddle answered. And get to bed, the Blokova added unnecessarily. Instead of going to her own shelf, Giddle crowded in with Hannah, hugging her so tightly that Hannah could hardly breathe. Yet she was glad not to have to lie there alone. Leaning back against Giddle, Hannah could feel the woman shaking with silent sobs. Then, a sudden, awful thought came to her. She couldn't turn over with Giddle there on the shelf, so she whispered to the wall, Giddle, Giddle, please. At last Giddle heard. What is it? The shoes. Giddle, I dropped the shoes outside. They'll know it was me out there. What will I do? What will I do? Do? The breathy voice whispered into her ear. Do? Why, you will do nothing, my darling child. Those were not your shoes. They were the bloke of us. I took them from outside her door because you deserved a better pair for such a difficult journey. They will discover her shoes in the morning. She began to laugh, muffling it against Hannah's back, a sound so close to sobbing that Hannah could not tell the difference. And that's the end of chapter 17. So we only have 2 more chapters to do. So good luck with your summary, and I will see you next week. Bye.